They mocked him when he first held that tiny, helpless baby in his arms, laughing at his choice and shaking their heads in disbelief. But years later, they were on their knees, pleading for his help. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Dr. Michael Anderson finished a long 12-hour shift at Willow Creek Hospital. The night was deep, and the cool air outside eased the stifling atmosphere of the hospital. Exhausted and worn out, he only wanted to drive home, lie down, and forget all the stress from work. Yet, as he reached the parking lot, an unexpected sound cut through the quiet of the night. It was a cry, a small, faint cry, as if carried away by the night wind, but with an invisible power that seemed to pull him back. Michael stopped in his tracks, all fatigue seemingly melting away. He listened closely, feeling his heartbeat slow down, each beat aching in response to the innocent cry. Leaving behind any thought of rest, he followed the sound, stepping toward the emergency entrance, and the sight before him left him choked up. It was a baby, a tiny figure curled up in a thin, tattered blanket, abandoned and forgotten in the cold, lonely darkness. Michael knelt down slowly, his hands trembling not just from the chill, but from the surge of sorrow rising within him. Carefully, he picked the baby up, one arm supporting the fragile body, the other wrapping around as if to shield the baby from this cold, desolate world. The moment he held the baby in his arms, the crying gradually faded. The baby's large, dark eyes looked up at him, pure and innocent, as if seeking a safety that had never been known. In the dim light outside the hospital, Michael saw the baby's soft brown skin and gently curled black hair, as delicate as silk threads. He couldn't take his eyes off the child, feeling a powerful, warm wave rising in his heart. "Oh, my dear, who could be so heartless as to abandon you here like this?" Michael whispered, his voice choked with emotion. He felt a strange, profound connection, difficult to describe. It was as if this child was not a stranger, but a part of him, a part he had never known, but that felt deeply familiar. When his eyes met the baby's, something touched the depths of his soul, awakening emotions that he had long buried. A sense of belonging, a feeling that his life now had new meaning. He understood that this moment, holding the baby in his arms, was not just a chance encounter. It was destiny. Fate had brought him and this child together. Without hesitation, Michael held the baby closer, as if wanting to pass on all his warmth and love to this small, fragile being. He knew that he couldn't turn his back on this child. This was a decision he had never imagined, never pictured in his life, but at this moment, it felt absolutely clear and right. He felt that he had to protect and care for this innocent child, and he couldn't let them feel abandoned once more. Michael walked back into the hospital, where the medical staff quickly examined the baby's health. While they worked, Michael stood still, his mind swirling with thoughts, but his heart had already made a decision. He knew that if it wasn't him, this child would be placed into the foster care system, facing days without love, drifting in uncertainty. He couldn't let that happen. This child deserved a home, a father who would love and protect them from all the storms ahead. "You need a home, and I'll be the one to bring that to you," he whispered, his eyes fixed on the innocent face of the child now sleeping peacefully. As Michael cradled the tiny, vulnerable child in his arms, he could feel a deep ache spreading through his chest, a mixture of anguish and a fierce protectiveness he hadn't anticipated. This child had been left abandoned, a fragile life nearly swallowed by the dark night. But Michael felt something stir within him, something inexplicable and powerful. This child needed love, warmth, and a family, and in that instant he knew he could be the one to provide it. The hospital staff soon gathered around, taking the baby to run tests and complete formal procedures. But as Michael watched them carry the child away, his heart pounded with a sense of loss and urgency. He couldn't shake the feeling that he'd found a missing part of himself in this child. Hours passed as he paced the hospital corridor, thoughts racing through his mind. His life had always been predictable, tightly controlled, and focused on his work, yet here he was at a crossroads he'd never seen coming. When the social worker arrived, she delivered the words that sealed his decision. No one had come forward for the child. The next step was to place him in the foster system. The thought of this innocent, defenseless baby being shuffled from home to home, living a life of uncertainty and hardship, was more than he could bear. "I'll take him," Michael said firmly, his voice unwavering. The social worker's eyes widened in surprise. "Dr. Anderson, are you certain? This is a significant decision, and Willow Creek is not exactly a place that easily accepts change," she warned. But Michael's gaze was unflinching. "I've never been more certain. This child needs a home, and I have a lot of love to give." That evening, as he completed the first steps of the adoption process, Michael felt a strange calm settle over him. He gently stroked the baby's cheek and whispered, "I'll call you Jason. Jason Anderson. And I promise you'll never be alone again." The news of his decision spread quickly through Willow Creek. In the small, insular town, Michael's choice was met with unease and suspicion. The people he had known for years, neighbors, colleagues, and even his family, began to look at him differently, questioning his judgment and his motives. The murmur of disapproval grew louder with each passing day. When his parents invited him to dinner shortly after, the weight of their concerns hung heavily in the air. As Michael entered their modest home, he felt a tightening in his chest, bracing himself for the conversation he knew awaited him. The clinking of silverware was the only sound in the room until his father, Edward, finally spoke up, his tone restrained but unmistakably critical. "Son, we need to talk about this situation," Edward said, barely concealing his discomfort. Michael took a steadying breath. "If you mean Jason, he's not a situation, Dad. He's my son." His mother, Margaret, reached across the table, placing a tentative hand on his. Her eyes were filled with a mix of concern and confusion. "Michael, we're just worried. Raising a child, especially a black child, here in Willow Creek, it's not going to be easy. Are you sure you've thought this through?" Michael's sister, Karen, chimed in, her expression etched with doubt. "And what about your job, Michael? You're always at the hospital. How will you manage a baby?" His face flushed, a quiet resolve settling within him. "I know it won't be easy, and I know I'll have to make sacrifices. But from the moment I held him, I knew he was meant to be my son. I'll make it work." Edward shook his head, his voice laced with disappointment. "Michael, you're not thinking clearly. People will talk. They may even treat you differently." Michael's response was soft, but filled with conviction. "Then let them talk. Jason deserves a loving home, and I'm willing to give him that." Silence enveloped the table, broken only by Margaret's sigh as she wiped away a tear. "We just want what's best for you, Michael. Are you truly sure that this is it?" Looking into their concerned faces, he felt a surge of strength. "I've never been sure of anything in my life. Jason is my son now, and nothing will change that." As he left his parents' house that evening, Michael felt the weight of their disapproval, the cold reality that his decision would isolate him in ways he hadn't anticipated. But in his heart, he knew he had made the right choice. As the days turned into weeks, Michael began to feel the true weight of his decision. Everywhere he went, he felt the cold stares and heard the hushed whispers of the townspeople. People he had known his entire life, patients, colleagues, even casual acquaintances, seemed to regard him with a sense of unease. He would walk down the grocery store aisle only to hear fragments of conversations as people turned their backs to him. One afternoon, Michael stopped by the local cafe, hoping for a quiet moment with a cup of coffee. But as he entered, the once familiar atmosphere felt strangely hostile. Tom, the town mechanic, sat near the counter, his voice rising as he spoke to a group of locals. "Willow Creek isn't the place for these kinds of decisions," Tom declared, shaking his head in disapproval. What was he thinking, bringing a black child into his life here? He's just asking for trouble. Michael's heart clenched as he overheard the words. He turned to leave, but Sarah, a young nurse who worked at the hospital, approached him with an awkward smile, as if trying to bridge the chasm that had suddenly formed between him and the community. "Dr. Anderson, I just wanted to say, I think it's brave, what you're doing," she said softly, her voice barely audible over the murmurs around them. Michael gave her a grateful nod, appreciating her kindness but painfully aware of the silence that greeted them from everyone else in the room. He returned home, his mind racing with doubts that gnawed at the edges of his conviction. Despite his resolve, he couldn't deny the loneliness that was creeping in, the subtle isolation he now felt even in his own town. The strain weighed on him in unexpected ways. Balancing his demanding job as a surgeon and his newfound responsibilities as Jason's father left him perpetually exhausted. He began to notice that his colleagues, once supportive and friendly, were becoming distant, their conversations now short and formal. At home, he faced a new set of challenges. Nights spent soothing Jason's cries, early mornings preparing bottles, and learning the rhythm of fatherhood alone. One evening, as Michael was finishing a particularly grueling shift, his phone buzzed with a call from his neighbor, Mrs. Thompson. "Dr. Anderson," she began, a hint of reproach in her voice. "Jason's been crying for over an hour. I think your babysitter might need some help." Guilt twisted in his chest as he looked at the clock, realizing he still had several hours left in his shift. He arranged for another doctor to cover for him, knowing the decision would likely draw criticism. As he rushed home, he couldn't help but feel a surge of frustration mixed with determination. He would be there for Jason, no matter the cost. When he finally arrived, Jason was in the arms of the babysitter, tears streaking his cheeks, his small body trembling from the prolonged crying. Michael took him into his arms, murmuring soothing words as he rocked him gently. Jason's cries gradually subsided, and as he looked up at his father with trusting eyes, Michael felt a fierce protectiveness surge through him. No amount of disapproval or hardship would make him turn his back on his son, but his resolve would soon be tested further. As Jason grew older and started preschool, he began facing his own struggles with the community. The other children often kept their distance, casting sidelong glances and whispering behind his back. When Michael would pick him up, he'd sometimes find Jason sitting alone, his small face drawn with sadness. One evening, as they prepared dinner together, Jason finally voiced the questions that had been weighing on his young mind. "Dad," he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, "why don't I look like the other kids? And why do their parents look at us funny?" Michael's heart broke at the sight of his son's downcast face. Kneeling beside him, he took Jason's small hands in his own, his voice soft but unwavering. "Jason, you are unique, and that makes you special. Some people may not understand us, but that doesn't change the fact that you're my son, and I love you more than anything." In that quiet moment, as father and son sat together, Michael's words weren't just a comfort. They were a promise. No matter how the world viewed them, he would teach Jason to be strong, to embrace who he was, and to rise above the narrow-mindedness that had once hurt them both. The challenges Michael and Jason faced seemed to grow with each passing year, yet with each obstacle, their bond only deepened. As Jason continued in school, the bullying became more frequent, the subtle remarks now turning into taunts from classmates too young to understand the cruelty of their words. Despite Michael's efforts to shield his son, he knew he couldn't always be there to protect him. Jason began to withdraw, his once curious gaze now clouded by questions and doubt. One evening, Michael returned home to find Jason in his room, his small body curled on the bed, shoulders hunched as he flipped through an old photo album Michael had made. The images captured happier moments, birthday celebrations, their first Christmas together, summer trips to the nearby lake. Seeing his son in that quiet, vulnerable state, Michael's heart ached, knowing that Jason was grappling with a pain that no child should bear. Sitting beside him, Michael gently placed a hand on Jason's shoulder. "Son, talk to me," he murmured, his voice filled with warmth and understanding. Jason looked up, his eyes shadowed by confusion and hurt. "Am I different? Why can't I be like everyone else?" The question lingered, raw and unfiltered, a reflection of the loneliness he felt. Michael took a deep breath, his own emotions churning. He knew that words alone couldn't erase the pain, but he hoped they could offer Jason a glimpse of his own strength. "Jason, being different doesn't make you any less," he began, his voice steady but charged with emotion. "It's hard, I know, But one day you'll see that what makes you unique also makes you strong. You have a heart that understands what others might not. You know how it feels to stand alone, and that's what will make you compassionate, wise, and brave." Jason's eyes glistened, and Michael could see that the words had touched something deep within him. For a moment, they sat in silence, the weight of their shared struggle binding them in a way that transcended words. In the days that followed, Michael found renewed determination. He sought opportunities to speak with other parents and teachers, attempting to foster understanding within the community. While some parents listened with empathy, others remained resistant, set in their ways. It was a battle Michael knew wouldn't be won overnight, yet he pressed on, determined to create a safer environment for his son. At home, Michael introduced Jason to stories of remarkable people who had faced discrimination and hardship, individuals who had risen above their circumstances to create meaningful change. Together, they read about scientists, leaders, and pioneers, people who had used their differences as a source of strength. Through these stories, Michael hoped Jason would begin to see himself not as a victim, but as someone capable of overcoming the world's ignorance. As Jason listened to these stories, a flicker of hope and resolve began to spark within him. He started to ask questions, eager to learn more, and in his father's steady guidance, he found a sense of purpose. Gradually, he began to embrace his uniqueness, realizing that his journey, while challenging, was shaping him into someone strong and resilient. The turning point came one afternoon when Jason, now a bit older and more assured, came home with an idea that left Michael both surprised and proud. "Dad, I want to start a club at school," he said, his voice carrying a spark of determination. "A club where everyone feels welcome, where kids like me can feel like they belong." Michael's heart swelled with pride, seeing in his son a reflection of his own strength and compassion. "That's a wonderful idea, Jason. I'll support you every step of the way." Together, they planned and organized, reaching out to teachers and students to create a space for acceptance and understanding within the school. Jason's club quickly attracted attention, not only from kids who felt out of place, but also from those who wanted to learn and grow alongside him. Week after week, the club meetings became a haven of acceptance, a small but powerful shift in the culture of the school. In those moments, Michael saw the man his son was becoming, a compassionate leader, a brave soul determined to make a difference. Through each challenge and heartache, Jason had found a way to turn pain into purpose. And for Michael, there was no greater triumph than watching his son rise above the world's limitations. Though their journey was far from over, both father and son now stood together on a path filled with possibility and hope. They had transformed their struggles into a source of strength, a testament to the unbreakable bond they shared. As Jason's club continued to flourish, its influence extended beyond the walls of the school, gradually capturing the attention of parents, teachers, and even community members. The club had become a safe haven, a place where differences were not only accepted but celebrated. It was here that children found belonging, free from judgment, and parents were starting to notice the positive shift in their children's attitudes and confidence. One evening, Michael received a call from the school principal, Mrs. Carter. Her tone was one of admiration mixed with surprise. "Dr. Anderson, I wanted to share how impactful Jason's club has become. The students have embraced it wholeheartedly, and even some of the parents are getting involved. Jason's initiative is creating real change, something our school has never seen before." Michael felt a deep pride welling up within him. He knew how much Jason had endured to reach this point, how many moments of self-doubt and loneliness he had faced. But now, Jason's resilience was creating ripples of compassion and understanding that extended throughout the entire community. His son's courage was lighting a path, not just for himself, but for others who struggled to feel accepted. One Saturday, as Michael and Jason sat together at the kitchen table, surrounded by pamphlets and notes about the club, Jason looked up with an idea that had been quietly forming in his mind. "Dad, what if we made the club bigger? Not just for our school, but for other kids who might feel the same way." Michael considered his son's words, recognizing the depth of his vision. "You mean expanding it beyond Willow Creek?" he asked, his voice filled with encouragement. Jason nodded, his eyes bright with excitement. Yes. What if we created a program, something that could reach other schools, other towns? A place where every kid could feel like they belong, no matter who they are or where they come from. Touched by Jason's ambition, Michael smiled and placed a hand on his shoulder. That's a beautiful idea, Jason, and I believe we can do it together. They began working tirelessly, reaching out to other schools, community leaders, and organizations that shared their vision. Michael used his connections to arrange meetings, and together they pitched their idea, a network of inclusive clubs that would create spaces for acceptance and empathy across schools. The journey was challenging, and there were moments of setback when doors were closed or budgets denied, but each time they faced rejection, they grew more determined. Gradually, their efforts began to gain traction. The first school outside Willow Creek launched a chapter of Jason's club, and soon after, another school joined. Letters of gratitude began pouring in from parents and teachers, sharing stories of how the club had helped students find their voice, their courage, and a newfound sense of pride. With each letter, Michael and Jason's bond grew even stronger, a silent affirmation of the journey they had embarked upon together. In one letter, a parent wrote, "My son used to come home withdrawn, struggling to feel like he belonged. Since joining the club, he's found friends who accept him as he is. Thank you, Jason and Dr. Anderson, for bringing this light into our lives." Michael and Jason shared these letters together, each one reinforcing their purpose. For Michael, the joy of seeing his son transform pain into a movement was an indescribable fulfillment. Jason had grown into a compassionate leader, a voice for those who felt unseen, and Michael knew that his son's journey was just beginning. Though they had achieved so much, Michael understood that this was not the end, but the start of a legacy that would extend beyond them both. Jason's club was more than a place for acceptance. It was a symbol of hope, resilience, and the power of love to conquer prejudice. And as father and son continued to work together, they knew they were leaving behind more than an idea. They were leaving behind a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit. As Jason's initiative grew, he and Michael found themselves busier than ever. Their days were filled with meetings, school visits, and workshops, all aimed at fostering an atmosphere of acceptance and empathy. Jason's club was quickly evolving into a movement, drawing the attention of media and organizations interested in supporting their cause. Yet, with this newfound visibility came challenges they hadn't anticipated. One evening, as they sat together reviewing the latest batch of emails and partnership proposals, Michael noticed a few messages with subject lines that made his heart sink. The content was filled with anger and vitriol, coming from those who viewed their work with suspicion, accusing them of disrupting traditional values or encouraging differences. Michael's first instinct was to protect Jason from these harsh words, but he knew he couldn't shield his son from the reality of their path. He looked up, watching Jason's face as he scrolled through the messages. Jason's jaw tightened, his expression a mixture of confusion and hurt. "Dad, why are they saying these things?" Jason's voice was quiet, tinged with disbelief. "All we're trying to do is help people feel like they belong." Michael took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "Some people fear change, Jason. They see differences as something to be controlled or silenced. But that doesn't mean we're wrong to do this. In fact, it makes what we're doing even more important." Jason nodded, though a hint of doubt lingered in his eyes. "It just feels unfair. Why can't they understand?" Michael reached across the table, placing a reassuring hand on his son's. "Sometimes, standing up for what's right means facing resistance. But remember, for every negative voice, there are dozens more who are grateful for what you're doing. You're making a difference, Jason. Don't let fear and ignorance stop you." Renewed by his father's words, Jason sat up straighter, determination filling his gaze. He knew he couldn't allow the negativity of a few to cloud the impact of his work. Together, he and Michael continued forward, responding to the negativity not with anger, but with stories of the lives they had touched, the children who now had friends, and the parents who were finally seeing their children come out of their shells. The movement began to grow stronger in response. News outlets started covering Jason's story, focusing on his resilience and the unwavering support of his father. Invitations began pouring in for them to speak at conferences and events, each opportunity allowing them to spread their message even further. At one such event, Jason took the stage, his father watching proudly from the audience. As he addressed the crowd, Jason spoke openly about his journey, the hardships, and the support he had received from his father. His voice was steady, his words filled with sincerity and vulnerability. "I used to wonder why I felt different, why people looked at me and didn't understand," Jason said, his gaze moving over the audience. "But I realized that being different isn't something to fear, it's something to embrace. My dad taught me that differences make us stronger. And now, I'm here to show others that they don't have to change to belong." The room filled with applause, a powerful acknowledgement of the impact of Jason's words. Michael's heart swelled with pride as he watched his son stand tall, his voice a beacon of hope for everyone in the room. After the event, a young boy approached Jason, his mother close behind. The boy looked up at Jason with wide, hopeful eyes and whispered, "Thank you. I thought I was the only one who felt this way." Jason knelt down to meet the boy's gaze, his own eyes filled with understanding. "You're not alone," he replied gently. "You're never alone." As they drove home that night, Michael looked over at his son, seeing the young boy he had first held so many years ago now transformed into a compassionate, courageous young man. He realized that, despite all they had faced, this journey had given them something immeasurable, a shared purpose and an unbreakable bond. Though they knew there were still challenges ahead, neither of them feared the path. Together, they had found strength in each other, a strength that carried them forward, no matter the obstacles. And as they returned to Willow Creek, they knew that their story was far from over. It was only just beginning, with each step paving the way for those who would one day walk alongside them. As the movement continued to gain momentum, Michael and Jason began seeing the effects of their efforts extending far beyond what they had imagined. Schools in nearby towns started implementing their club model, creating safe spaces for students to connect and find acceptance. Letters and messages poured in, stories from children and parents whose lives had been touched by the initiative, each one reinforcing their shared mission. One evening, as Michael sat at the kitchen table, reading one of these letters, he looked up at Jason, who was busy organizing plans for an upcoming workshop. In the quiet moments between their busy schedules, Michael felt a swell of gratitude, realizing how much they had both grown through this journey. Jason's resilience and passion were not just a testament to his own strength, but also a reflection of the bond they shared, one that had been tested, deepened, and strengthened with each challenge. Jason noticed his father's gaze and gave a small, questioning smile. "What's on your mind, Dad?" Michael's voice was filled with pride as he responded, "Just thinking about how far we've come. You've turned this idea into something incredible, something that's changing lives." Jason's smile softened, his eyes filled with gratitude. "I couldn't have done any of it without you. You believed in me, even when I doubted myself. Everything we've done, it's just as much yours as it is mine." Their shared purpose had transformed into something larger than either of them had anticipated. It had become a source of healing, not only for Jason, but for Michael as well. The struggles and sacrifices had woven them together, and now they stood not just as father and son, but as partners, united in a mission that transcended personal ambitions. Then, a new opportunity arose, one that would challenge them further. A national conference on youth mental health and inclusivity reached out, inviting them to present the story of their movement to a wider audience. This invitation was both exhilarating and daunting. It meant facing a much larger platform, opening themselves up to scrutiny on a grand scale. Jason felt a flicker of apprehension, a reminder of the doubts he'd once wrestled with, the voices that had tried to diminish his sense of self. But Michael, sensing Jason's unease, placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You're ready for this, Jason. You've proven that you can make a difference, that your voice matters. This is the next step." At the conference, the crowd was packed with educators, activists, parents, and students from across the country, all eager to hear their story. As Jason took the stage with Michael by his side, he felt a mixture of nerves and determination. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of his journey, filled with a conviction that came from the struggles he had overcome. We started with one small idea, one club and one school, to make sure that kids like me didn't have to face their challenges alone, Jason began, his gaze sweeping the room. But it's become something so much bigger. Together, we're proving that acceptance can spread, that kindness can break down walls, and that we don't have to be defined by others' limits. We define ourselves. The room was silent, captivated by his words, each person feeling the sincerity and depth of his message. Jason's voice, once silenced by fear and doubt, now echoed with clarity, reaching hearts that understood the importance of what he had built. After the presentation, as people approached them with words of support and admiration, Michael felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. The journey they had embarked on all those years ago had led them here, to a place where their story was inspiring others to create change within their own communities. As they headed home, both father and son knew that this was only the beginning of a much larger mission. Their movement was now a beacon, a symbol of hope for countless others who felt isolated or unseen. And as they looked ahead, they did so with the knowledge that they would continue, side by side, building a future filled with empathy, resilience, and unwavering love. As they returned to Willow Creek after the conference, Michael and Jason were greeted by a warm reception. The town had come a long way since Jason's early days in school, when acceptance felt like a distant dream. Now, both Michael and Jason were symbols of resilience and change, and their influence had touched the hearts of many. One evening, as they walked through the town square, Jason noticed a group of younger children playing, laughing, and chatting easily with one another, free from the divisions and judgments that had once plagued his own childhood. He paused, watching them with a quiet smile, and felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The life he had once imagined, one where everyone could belong, regardless of their differences, was becoming a reality. Michael placed a hand on Jason's shoulder, noticing the contentment on his son's face. "You've helped make this happen," he said softly. "You've given these kids a gift that goes beyond words." Jason nodded, his gaze still on the children. "It wasn't just me, Dad. We did this together. You showed me that love and understanding can change even the most closed hearts. That's what gave me the strength to keep going." As they continued their walk, they passed the school where Jason's club had first started. The familiar building now held countless memories, moments of growth, pain, and triumph. Jason turned to Michael, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Dad," he whispered, "for everything, for standing by me, for believing in me even when it felt like the world didn't." Michael smiled, his own heart full. "Jason, you've become more than I ever dreamed. Watching you grow, seeing the impact you've had, I couldn't be prouder. You've taken our story and turned it into something that will live on, something that will help others find their way." Their journey had been long and filled with challenges, but they had arrived at a place of peace and purpose. Both Michael and Jason knew that their work was not finished, that the road ahead would still present obstacles and hardships. But now, they were ready to face it all, knowing that they had each other and that the legacy they were building would continue to inspire hope, strength, and acceptance for generations to come. As the movement gained recognition across the region, Michael and Jason were invited to hold a special workshop at a school in a neighboring town. They eagerly accepted, seeing it as another opportunity to spread their message of acceptance and empathy. On the day of the event, the school's auditorium was packed with students, teachers, and parents, all eager to hear their story and learn from their experiences. Michael spoke first, sharing their journey, their struggles, and the inspiration behind Jason's club. He described the challenges they had faced, both as father and son, and as individuals in a world that wasn't always welcoming. His words carried a sincerity and warmth that captivated the audience, and he ended with a message of hope, encouraging everyone to embrace diversity and stand up for what they believed in. Then Jason took the stage. He spoke of his own experiences, the pain of feeling different, and the strength he found through his father's unwavering support. He encouraged the students to believe in themselves and to find courage in their unique identities. His voice was steady, and his words filled with purpose. But as he looked out over the crowd, he noticed a group of students whispering, their expressions marked with skepticism. One student raised his hand, and when Jason acknowledged him, he spoke bluntly, his voice challenging. It's easy for you to say all this now, but how do you know people can really change? Aren't there always going to be people who don't accept others, no matter what? The question hung heavily in the air, and Jason felt the weight of his own journey in that moment. He took a deep breath, collecting his thoughts, then responded with the wisdom that had come from his own experiences. You're right, he said calmly. There will always be people who resist change. But I know from experience that some people can and do change. Not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. It may take time and courage, and there will be setbacks. But if we give up on people too quickly, we'll never know how much difference we might have made. The student nodded thoughtfully, seeming to absorb Jason's words, and the room filled with a renewed sense of possibility. The workshop concluded with a standing ovation, as the audience recognized the depth of what Michael and Jason had shared. As they left the auditorium, students and parents approached them, expressing gratitude, asking questions, and seeking advice. On the way home, Jason and Michael reflected on the day's events. The question had struck a nerve, bringing them back to their own early doubts and the countless hurdles they had overcome. But it had also reaffirmed their commitment to the journey they were on. For Michael, the moment was a reminder of the strength his son had developed, an inner resilience born from hardship but transformed into compassion. And for Jason, it was a powerful realization that their mission was as vital as ever, not only for those who had found hope through their movement, but for those who still doubted, still resisted, and still needed someone to believe in them. They knew that every step forward would bring new challenges, but they faced them with a quiet confidence, fueled by their shared conviction. Their journey, though unpredictable, was a testament to the transformative power of love, acceptance, and unwavering belief in one another. Together, they would continue to pave a path of understanding, knowing that the impact of their story would echo far beyond the walls of any single auditorium, reaching those who needed it most. As Michael and Jason's story continued to resonate, they became invited guests at numerous schools and events, where their message of resilience and acceptance touched countless lives. Their journey began inspiring individuals from all backgrounds, parents, teachers, and especially children struggling to find their place. Jason's club model was now being adopted in schools across the state, creating pockets of kindness and understanding in communities once divided by fear of the unknown. One day, they received an invitation to speak at a national conference on diversity and inclusion in education. The honor was immense, and both father and son felt the weight of their journey as they prepared for the event. As they rehearsed their speeches, they reflected on the path that had led them there, the pain they had turned into purpose, and the small yet profound victories they had shared along the way. On the day of the conference, the hall was filled with people from across the country, all gathered to learn, share, and be inspired. Michael spoke first, recounting the early days of their journey, how they had faced resistance, and the strength he had found in supporting his son. His voice was filled with conviction as he described the power of standing beside someone through adversity, believing in them even when the world refused to understand. Then it was Jason's turn. He took a steady breath, looking out over the audience, and began speaking from the heart. When I was younger, I struggled to find my place. I felt different, and at times, that difference felt like a burden. But I've learned that what makes us different also makes us powerful. My dad taught me that we can create change not by hiding who we are, but by embracing it. He paused, letting the words sink in. And that's what this movement is about, showing each person that they have a place in this world, that they don't have to change to belong. We can redefine what belonging looks like by creating spaces where acceptance is the foundation. The room erupted in applause, and as Jason looked at his father, he saw pride mirrored in Michael's eyes. They had come so far from the small, hesitant steps of their first meeting, from the nights of doubt and pain. Together, they had built a legacy of hope, one that would continue long after they stepped off that stage. After the conference, people flooded them with words of gratitude and admiration. Educators asked how they could implement similar clubs in their own schools. Parents thanked them for giving their children a voice. And children approached Jason with wide eyes, sharing how his story had given them courage to embrace their own identities. As they headed home, Jason and Michael reflected on the impact they had made, realizing that their story had grown beyond them. What had started as a father's decision to love and protect his son had blossomed into a movement that would touch lives across generations. Their journey, once a private struggle, had become a beacon for those searching for understanding and acceptance. They knew that life would continue to present challenges, but they faced the future with unwavering resolve. They were no longer just father and son. They were the architects of a legacy that had shown others how to find light in the darkest of times, how to build bridges where others saw walls, and how to transform pain into purpose. And as they looked out over the road ahead, they knew they would continue to walk it together, their hearts forever bound by the journey that had defined them, with each step a testament to the power of love, resilience, and the unbreakable bond they had built. As the reach of their movement expanded, Jason and Michael encountered a new wave of obstacles. Although they were widely supported, there were still individuals and groups who saw their work as a threat to traditional values. The criticism ranged from subtle disapproval to outright condemnation, with some communities openly rejecting their initiatives. One evening, Michael found Jason sitting quietly at the kitchen table, a stack of harsh letters and articles in front of him. The strength in his son's face seemed to flicker, replaced by a hint of frustration and fatigue. Why can't people see that we're only trying to help? Jason's voice was filled with a mixture of sadness and defiance. Sometimes, it feels like no matter how hard we try, there will always be people who won't accept us or what we stand for. Michael sat down beside him, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. Jason, you've already achieved more than most people could in a lifetime. Changing hearts takes time and courage. Every person we've reached is a victory, no matter how many people try to push back. Jason looked at his father, the familiar warmth and reassurance bringing him back to the foundation they had built together. He nodded, feeling his strength return. You're right, Dad. If we let these setbacks stop us, we'd be turning our backs on everyone who believes in what we're doing. Renewed with resolve, they continued their work with even greater dedication. They reached out to communities that were hesitant, meeting with local leaders and families, listening to their concerns and sharing stories of transformation. Slowly, the walls of resistance began to soften. Some communities that had once opposed them began to open up, allowing Jason's club to be established in their schools. At each new school, Jason made it a point to visit and speak with the students, to show them firsthand that being different was not only okay, but something to be celebrated. Michael often joined him, watching with pride as his son connected with young people, sharing his journey and inspiring others to embrace their own. Through these experiences, Jason learned that real change required patience and resilience. He saw that transformation wasn't always immediate, but each small step forward was a victory in its own right. With Michael by his side, he continued to forge paths where none had existed, paving the way for acceptance and unity. One day, as they returned home from another successful event, Michael turned to Jason and said, "You've become a light for so many people, Jason, and I couldn't be prouder of the man you've become." Jason smiled, the weight of their journey evident in his gaze, but balanced by the unwavering determination they had built together. "I couldn't have done it without you, Dad. You taught me what it means to believe in something bigger than ourselves." In that moment, they both understood that the strength they had found in each other was their greatest asset. It was a bond that had withstood countless challenges, shaping not only their lives but the lives of everyone they touched. And as they continued their work, they knew that this strength, built on love and resilience, would guide them through whatever lay ahead. As the years passed, Jason's movement flourished, becoming a beacon of hope for schools and communities across the nation. What had started as a humble club in one small town had transformed into an organization with chapters in countless schools, each one dedicated to fostering a sense of belonging and acceptance. The impact was profound. Children who had once felt invisible found friendship, guidance, and empowerment through the club's mission. Jason, now an adult and a leader in his own right, found himself speaking at national conventions, working with educators, and developing programs to ensure the movement's growth. But through it all, he remained grounded in the same values Michael had instilled in him years before. Every step he took was still, in essence, a tribute to the journey he had shared with his father. One day, as they prepared to open a new chapter of the organization in a city far from Willow Creek, Michael sat down with Jason, his voice tinged with pride and a hint of nostalgia. "Jason, you've created something extraordinary," Michael said, looking at his son with admiration. "But I hope you know that, beyond all the lives you've touched, the legacy we built together is one of love and courage. What we did wasn't just about changing others, it was about changing ourselves, too." Jason nodded, feeling the weight of his father's words. "Everything we've accomplished, every person we've helped, started with the love and belief you showed me. You taught me that one person's kindness can change the world. And together, we've proven that." In the following months, Michael began to step back, trusting Jason to continue leading the movement with the same heart and integrity that had guided them from the beginning. He watched as his son grew into a compassionate leader, one whose resilience and wisdom made him a natural guide for the next generation. At a special ceremony commemorating the organization's milestone of reaching 1,000 chapters, Jason was asked to deliver the keynote speech. As he stood before the crowd, he saw young faces looking up at him, their expressions filled with hope and inspiration. He felt a powerful connection to each one of them, knowing they were all part of the legacy he and his father had built. "In my life, I've learned that real change begins with courage and love," Jason said, his voice resonant with conviction. "We may face challenges and setbacks, but when we believe in ourselves and in each other, we can overcome anything. My father taught me this truth, and today, I pass it on to all of you." The crowd erupted into applause, and in that moment, Jason felt the depth of his journey, the struggles, the triumphs, and the enduring bond with his father that had made it all possible. Looking out over the faces of those he had inspired, he knew that his father's legacy of love would continue to echo through every life they had touched, carrying their message of acceptance far into the future. And as he looked back at Michael, who was watching with pride from the audience, Jason knew that their journey, though constantly evolving, would never truly end. Together, they had built something timeless, something that would empower countless others to believe in the power of love, resilience, and the courage to be themselves. The auditorium was packed with people, but Jason's focus was on a single, empty chair in the front row, a seat saved for his father, Michael. As he prepared to address the crowd, his mind drifted back through their shared journey. The late-night conversations, the relentless battles they'd faced, and the countless lives they had touched. Today was a celebration, not only of the organization's success, but of a legacy that he and his father had built from nothing. He took a deep breath, his heart pounding with anticipation and a touch of nervousness. His gaze swept over the audience, and he smiled, addressing them with his familiar warmth and sincerity. "Before we begin," he said, his voice steady yet gentle, "I'd love to know, where are you watching this from? It's incredible how our journey has reached people from all over. Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and share this message of hope." As he paused, he felt the energy in the room shift, the audience leaning forward, captivated. Then, with the air thick with anticipation, Jason delved into the story with a single powerful memory. "It started with a single choice," he began, his voice low, filled with the weight of recollection. "A choice my father made to stand by me, even when the world didn't understand. Together, we faced every judgment, every whispered word, and every closed door. My father taught me that the most powerful weapon against hatred and fear is love. And that lesson has brought us all here today." The words resonated, each one landing with profound meaning. The room was silent, completely absorbed in his story, as he described the highs and lows, the battles they'd fought, not just against societal prejudice, but against their own doubts and insecurities. Jason shared moments of vulnerability, describing the pain of feeling out of place, the fear of rejection, and the courage it took to keep moving forward. "There were nights," he said, his voice softening, "when I questioned everything. I wondered if we could really make a difference or if we were just fooling ourselves. But every time, my father was there, reminding me of the importance of standing up for what we believed in. He would say, 'Changing the world isn't easy, Jason, but it's always worth it.'" The crowd was entranced, hanging on to every word. Jason could feel their empathy, their connection to the story that had once been his alone, but now belonged to everyone in that room. He saw people nodding, wiping away tears, and he felt the depth of their shared understanding. And then, with a strength he hadn't known he possessed, he revealed the pain of the setbacks they had faced, the resistance they had met in places they had once called home. But each hardship had only brought him closer to his father, solidifying their bond and giving him the resilience to lead the movement into its future. "There were moments when the weight felt too heavy," Jason continued, his voice carrying the rawness of truth. "But my father reminded me that this journey wasn't just about us. It was about everyone who had ever felt alone or different. He gave me the courage to keep going, to believe that even the smallest acts of kindness can create ripples." As he neared the end of his speech, he paused, looking toward that empty chair in the front row. It symbolized everything they had fought for, every dream they had pursued together. Though Michael couldn't be there in person that day, Jason felt his presence deeply. "I stand here today because of him," Jason finished, his voice filled with both gratitude and sorrow. "Because he taught me that love is stronger than hate, that compassion can break down walls, and that our lives are defined not by the challenges we face, but by the courage with which we meet them." The crowd erupted into applause, and Jason felt a swell of emotion as he took it in. For a moment, he closed his eyes, letting the warmth of their support wash over him, feeling his father's legacy alive in every clapping hand, in every teary eye. This was the journey they had started together, and now he was carrying it forward, determined to honor everything his father had given him. As the applause faded, Jason knew that his story had become their story, a story of resilience, love, and the unbreakable bond between father and son that would continue to inspire for generations to come. As Jason stepped down from the stage, he was immediately surrounded by people, each wanting to share their story, to thank him for the courage his words had inspired. Their gratitude was a reminder that every word he and his father had spoken, every lesson they had learned, had touched lives far beyond what they could have imagined. Amid the crowd, a young girl approached him, her eyes filled with the same uncertainty and pain he had once felt. She looked up at him, clutching a small notebook filled with sketches and notes. "Mr. Anderson," she whispered, barely audible, "I always thought being different was something I had to hide. But hearing you speak today, I feel like I don't have to hide anymore." Jason knelt down, meeting her gaze with a gentle smile. "You never have to hide," he said softly. "Your differences make you extraordinary, and the world needs people like you. Don't ever be afraid to let your true self shine." As he watched the girl's face light up with newfound hope, he was reminded of his father's words, the countless times Michael had assured him of his own worth, helping him find strength in his uniqueness. It was as if, through helping this young girl, he was honoring the way his father had once guided him, a cycle of compassion and understanding that would continue with each new person he reached. After the event, as Jason walked to his car, he felt a sudden need for solitude, a moment to connect with the memories of his father that had sustained him. He drove to the lake where he and Michael had spent countless afternoons talking, laughing, and finding peace amidst the challenges they faced. Sitting by the water, Jason felt the breeze brush against his face, carrying with it a quiet sense of his father's presence. He closed his eyes, letting the memories flood over him. The laughter, the shared dreams, and the unwavering love that had carried him through his darkest moments. In that silence, he spoke softly, as if his father were right beside him. "Dad, everything I am, everything I've done, it's because of you. You gave me the courage to face the world, and every day, I carry a part of you with me." A tear slipped down his cheek, but it was a tear of gratitude, not sorrow. He had come full circle, honoring his father's legacy not through words alone, but through the lives he had touched, the children he had inspired, and the movement he had built in Michael's memory. Jason took a deep breath, feeling a profound sense of peace settle within him. He knew that, no matter where life led him, the bond he shared with his father would remain unbroken, a bond that had transcended every challenge, a love that would forever guide him. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden hues across the lake, Jason rose, his heart light, his purpose clear. His father's legacy was alive in him, in every life he touched, and in the journey they had begun together. A journey that would continue to inspire hope, resilience, and love for generations yet to come. In the years that followed, Jason dedicated himself to expanding the organization's reach, carrying forward the legacy he and Michael had built together. The impact of their work could be seen in countless schools, where children once isolated found connection, and where differences were no longer shunned but embraced. Jason had become a symbol of resilience and compassion, his message resonating with a new generation ready to create a more inclusive world. One day, Jason received a call from a teacher in a distant city who wanted to implement the organization's program at her school. Her voice was filled with excitement and hope as she shared the story of a student who reminded her of Jason in his younger years, a child who struggled with feeling different, isolated from his peers. Listening to her, Jason felt a sense of familiarity and purpose. The teacher's description brought him back to his own struggles, the moments when Michael had been his guiding light. Moved, Jason decided to visit the school himself, wanting to meet the student and support him in the same way his father had supported him. When he arrived, Jason was introduced to a shy boy named Leo, who looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and nervousness. Jason sat beside him, sensing the weight of his insecurities, the same burdens he had once carried. "Leo," he began, his voice gentle, "I know it's hard feeling like you don't quite fit in, but I want you to know that being different is a gift. You're unique, and that uniqueness is something powerful." Leo looked at him, his eyes wide with wonder. "But what if people don't like me because of it?" he whispered, voicing a fear Jason knew all too well. Jason nodded, a soft smile on his face. "I understand, and I felt that way too. But the right people, the ones who will see you for who you are, will be drawn to you because of your differences, not in spite of them. And you'll find that, in time, those differences are what make you strong." Leo's face softened, a small glimmer of hope appearing in his eyes. He seemed to find comfort in Jason's words, and Jason saw a spark in him, the same spark he had once carried, ignited by his father's love. As he left the school that day, Jason felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing he was now the guiding force for others that his father had been for him. He had come full circle, honoring Michael's legacy by being a mentor, a friend, and a source of hope for children like Leo. Jason knew that his journey would continue, that each new child he inspired, each school he reached, was another chapter in the story he and his father had started. And as he looked out over the horizon, he felt his father's presence, a quiet strength that would forever guide him, reminding him of the power of love, resilience, and the unbreakable bond they had shared. The torch had been passed, and Jason was ready to carry it forward, lighting the way for generations to come. As Jason continued his work, he was approached by a publishing company with an intriguing proposal. They wanted him to write a book capturing the journey he had shared with his father and the growth of the movement they had created together. Initially hesitant, Jason realized that the book could serve as a lasting testament to the power of love, resilience, and acceptance, a gift he could leave for future generations, extending his father's teachings far beyond his lifetime. Over the next few months, Jason poured his heart into the pages, recounting the struggles, triumphs, and lessons that had shaped his life and mission. He shared the quiet moments with his father by the lake, the late-night talks filled with words of encouragement, and the unwavering support Michael had shown him at every turn. The process was both challenging and healing, a journey through memories that strengthened his commitment to carry on his father's legacy. When the book was published, it quickly gained attention, touching readers around the world. Letters and messages arrived daily, filled with stories from people who had been inspired to embrace their own journeys of self-acceptance, moved by the story of a father and son who had turned pain into purpose. Jason felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that his father's voice lived on in every word, every lesson shared. At a book signing event, an elderly man approached Jason, holding a worn copy of the book in his hands. His face was lined with years of experience, his eyes filled with emotion. "Thank you," the man said, his voice trembling slightly. "Your story reminded me of my own journey, and it's given me the courage to reconnect with my family, to be open in ways I never thought possible." Jason smiled, feeling his father's presence in that moment, a quiet pride and gratitude that filled his heart. "I'm glad our story could reach you," he replied gently. "My father taught me that love and understanding have the power to heal even the deepest wounds." The man nodded, and they exchanged a meaningful look, one of shared understanding that transcended words. As the line of readers continued, Jason felt a renewed sense of purpose. He realized that, through his words and actions, he was building bridges across generations, inspiring people from all walks of life to believe in the strength that lay within them. His father's teachings were now a part of something far greater than either of them had imagined, reaching countless lives and encouraging others to find courage in their own stories. As the evening came to a close, Jason stood alone for a moment, taking in the significance of what they had achieved together. The bond he had shared with his father, once a private strength, was now a source of hope for others, a reminder that compassion could transform lives and create ripples that span generations. And as he left the event, Jason looked up at the night sky, silently thanking his father for guiding him, for teaching him the importance of love, and for giving him a legacy that would forever light his path. Jason's work reached a new level of impact as he began collaborating with educational programs around the world, adapting his father's lessons into curriculum for schools and communities that sought to create spaces of acceptance. His story, once centered around the small town of Willow Creek, now touched people in distant cities and countries, transforming lives in ways he could scarcely have imagined. One afternoon, Jason received an invitation from a renowned international conference on education and social development. The organizers wanted him to lead a keynote speech, sharing his journey and insights with leaders, educators, and activists from across the globe. The invitation was an honor, yet it brought a quiet sense of weight with it. Jason knew that, once again, he would be telling not just his story, but his father's, a legacy of love and courage carried across miles and borders. On the day of the event, as he stepped onto the stage, Jason felt a wave of anticipation wash over him. He took a moment to pause, letting the magnitude of the moment settle in, and then began with a simple, heartfelt question. Wherever you are, whatever journey has brought you here, take a moment to think of the people who've inspired you, those who have shown you the path forward. Because today, I am not here alone. I am here carrying the strength and wisdom of my father, whose legacy lives on through each of us willing to believe in the power of compassion. As he spoke, he recounted the challenges he and his father had faced together, the sacrifices, the moments of doubt, and the strength they found in each other's unwavering support. His words were filled with vivid emotion, painting a picture of the countless children, families, and communities whose lives had been touched by the organization they had built together. In the audience, people were visibly moved, their eyes reflecting a shared understanding of the struggles and triumphs woven into Jason's story. He described the ordinary yet profound moments with his father, the quiet encouragements and gestures that had once seemed small but had become the foundation of his resilience. Every journey, no matter how solitary it seems, is built on the love and courage of those who came before us, Jason continued, his voice filled with sincerity. My father taught me that even in our darkest moments, we carry a light within us, a light meant to guide not just ourselves, but others who walk beside us. As he finished, the room erupted in applause, the power of his words resonating deeply with each person present. After the event, attendees from various countries approached him, sharing how his story had reminded them of their own paths, of people who had inspired them, and of the strength that could emerge through empathy and understanding. That night, as Jason sat alone in his hotel room, he reflected on the journey he and his father had started so many years ago. They had set out with the simple goal of creating a space for acceptance, yet their work had grown into a global movement, transcending borders and uniting hearts. He felt a quiet peace as he realized that, though his father was no longer by his side, Michael's spirit was woven into everything he did. Jason's voice had become a continuation of his father's, echoing across countries and generations, creating a legacy of compassion that would endure long after he was gone. Jason closed his eyes, grateful for the journey, for the love that had shaped him, and for the countless lives his father's teachings would continue to touch. He knew, in the depths of his heart, that the power of the unseen, the love, courage, and strength passed from one generation to the next, was the truest form of immortality. As Jason's work continued to expand, he began mentoring young leaders who would one day take the reins of the organization. Each one came from a different background, yet they all shared a deep desire to create spaces of acceptance and understanding in their communities. Jason saw in them the same spark his father had once seen in him, and he felt a profound sense of fulfillment as he passed on the lessons Michael had taught him. During a training session with these young leaders, Jason shared one of the most personal memories he held of his father. He spoke of a night when he was young, a moment filled with doubt, when Michael had sat beside him and reminded him of his worth and purpose. "My father always told me that true strength isn't found in the absence of struggle, but in the way we face it," Jason said, his voice steady and filled with warmth. "He taught me that love and resilience can transform even the deepest pain into something beautiful, something that can help others." The young leaders listened intently, their faces a mixture of admiration and respect. They saw in Jason a living embodiment of the values he preached, a man who had walked through adversity and emerged stronger, more compassionate, and deeply committed to a vision of unity. One of the young leaders, a woman named Maya, approached Jason after the session. Her eyes were bright, filled with emotion. "Thank you," she said softly. "Hearing your story has given me the courage to believe in my own. I know now that even my struggles can be a source of strength for others." Jason smiled, his heart filled with pride and gratitude. "Remember, Maya," he replied, "our stories aren't just ours. They're part of something much larger, a legacy passed down from those who believed in us, who showed us the way. And now we have a chance to do the same for others." As the training concluded, Jason felt a deep sense of peace. He knew that the organization was in good hands, that these young leaders would carry forward the torch he and his father had lit. They were the future of the movement, each one a beacon of hope, ready to inspire others in their own unique way. Later that evening, Jason found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. He understood that his work was not just about creating change in the present. It was about building a foundation that would endure for generations to come. His father's legacy had become something timeless, woven into the hearts of everyone they had touched. As he looked out over the horizon, Jason felt a quiet, powerful certainty. Michael's teachings, their shared journey, and the love that had sustained them through every challenge. These were gifts that would continue to echo, reaching people he would never meet, in places he would never see. And with that thought, he smiled, feeling a profound connection to his father, to the legacy they had created together, and to the countless lives that would be touched by the work he had dedicated his life to. He knew that, even in the unseen, their bond would live on, a testament to the enduring power of love, resilience, and hope. Years passed, and Jason's organization continued to thrive, its influence spreading across communities and countries. The movement had grown beyond what he and his father had once dreamed of, transforming lives in ways that even he couldn't have imagined. But amidst the success, Jason remained deeply connected to the foundation of it all, the love and guidance his father had given him. One day, as Jason walked through the headquarters of his organization, he came across a wall covered in photographs and handwritten notes from people whose lives had been changed by the movement. Each picture and message told a story. Children who had found friends, young adults who had gained confidence, families who felt united in acceptance. Jason paused, taking in each face, each word of gratitude, and felt a familiar warmth filling his heart. As he stood there, an elderly man approached him, one of the organization's early supporters who had seen it grow from a simple club into a worldwide movement. The man looked at Jason with admiration and spoke softly. "This legacy, this world you've created, it's remarkable. But I have to ask, what keeps you grounded after all these years?" Jason smiled, his thoughts immediately drifting back to his father. "My father taught me everything I know about love and resilience," he replied. "He showed me that true strength lies in the ability to lift others, to believe in people even when it's hard. This work, these people, it's all an extension of what he instilled in me." The man nodded, touched by the sincerity of Jason's words. "Your father must be incredibly proud of you," he said, his voice filled with respect. "You've carried his legacy with grace and strength." Jason felt a surge of gratitude as he looked back at the wall of faces, each one a testament to the impact he and his father had made. "My father once told me that each act of kindness is like planting a seed," he said quietly. He believed that those seeds would one day grow into something beautiful. And looking around now, I realize he was right. The elderly man placed a hand on Jason's shoulder. "You've planted a forest, Jason, a forest of hope, of unity, and of love." That evening, Jason returned to the lake where he and his father had spent countless afternoons talking about their dreams, their fears, and their hopes for the future. Sitting by the water, he felt a profound sense of peace, a feeling of coming full circle. He knew that, though his father was no longer physically present, Michael's spirit remained with him, guiding him, inspiring him, and reminding him of the love that had made everything possible. As the sun set over the water, casting a warm glow over the horizon, Jason closed his eyes, letting the memories of his father wash over him. In that moment, he understood that his father's legacy was not just in the work they had done together, but in the countless lives they had touched, the love they had spread, and the hope they had ignited. And with that, Jason made a silent promise to continue carrying forward the legacy of compassion, resilience, and unwavering belief in the goodness of people. The journey would go on, and his father's light would forever be the guiding force that led him forward. Just as Jason was about to leave the lake, he received a message from a number he didn't recognize. Curious, he opened it, and his heart skipped a beat. The message contained an old photograph, a picture of Michael, his father, standing with a group of people Jason had never seen before, with a handwritten note on the back that read, "The true legacy lies in those who carry the mission forward. Seek and you shall find." Confused and intrigued, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his father's story than he had known. He searched through his father's belongings that night, coming across letters and journals detailing encounters and conversations his father had kept hidden. Each entry hinted at a network of individuals dedicated to a cause larger than Jason could have imagined, a cause that his father had once been a part of. His hands trembled as he pieced together the hidden threads of Michael's past, discovering that his father had once worked with a group dedicated to creating social change on a global scale, a group that now appeared to be calling on Jason to continue what Michael had left unfinished. The clues pointed to an urgent mission, something his father had kept hidden to protect him until the right moment. And now, that moment had come. Jason felt a surge of excitement and trepidation. Everything he had built, everything he believed about his journey, seemed to be only a small part of a much larger, mysterious legacy his father had entrusted to him. As he looked out into the night, the gravity of the journey ahead weighed on him. He knew that this wasn't the end, but rather the beginning of a new chapter, one that would demand everything he had and more. Turning back to the camera, Jason spoke directly to his viewers, his voice filled with resolve and urgency. "I've just uncovered something that changes everything I thought I knew. My father's legacy, the movement we built together, it was only the beginning. What I found will take us further than we ever dreamed. And remember, this journey, it's only just begun." With a final, intense look, he urged his audience, share this video with friends and family, and let me know your thoughts below. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. We're going on a journey that will change everything.